Sup guys, it's been quite a while since Yorktown 2 has come out, and I never got around to testing the USS and IJN duos against the medium armor boss. In a previous video, I analyzed their performance through mostly calcs and came to the conclusion that the USS Duo would win on light armor, lose on heavy, and be competitive against medium in terms of damage output. Possibly winning if they remain concealed for more airstrikes. However, since the IJN carriers provide large universal debuffs that increase the damage of the rest of the fleet, the USS Duo would likely lose in terms of overall damage contribution. I also talked about how Implacable is a very powerful ship, but not always the best option if the enemy you're fighting doesn't move all over the place. I haven't seen any new information since then that would change my mind on either topic, but it's always nice to test your idea so that you don't get too lost in the sauce. Today, I'm going to be showing you what I found in practice against the Arbiter strength, which is obviously a medium armor boss. I'll be taking a look at the performance of the USS Duo compared to the IJN Duo, as well as comps that feature Implacable versus comps that don't. I first started with the IJN Duo plus Implacable, and I put the Skyraider on Implacable because I thought it would be too slow on one of the IJN carriers. With this setup, Shinano and Haku can equip the most standard loadouts and sync perfectly with Implacable, which you can see in the airstrike here. I used the same Vanguard for all the fleets, swapping out Kazagumo for Baltimore in fleets that featured more than one USS carrier. After doing 20 runs with the first loadout, I tried putting Skyraider on Haku instead, so I had to switch the plain loadouts of all the carriers to match the new timing. I used 2 torpedo bombers on Implacable so her airstrike wouldn't be too much faster than Haku's. Here's what the timing looks like for the last set of airstrikes of the fight. With this second loadout, Shinano launches a bit before Implacable on the last airstrike, but barely misses any of her damage. Since she does swap out a catapult for a beacon though, you can see her average damage does decrease slightly. On the other hand, as expected, Haku's damage went up by quite a bit when replacing Tenrai with the Skyraider. What was unexpected though was that Implacable's damage went up after dropping the Skyraider for a torpedo bomber. The cause of this was that the faster airstrikes allowed her and Haku to get off their third airstrikes before being revealed by the enemy planes, as you can see here. Shinano was also able to stay concealed at times, but not consistently. When you look at the numbers more closely, it does make sense that Haku's damage increase of about 10% had to be from more than just the Skyraider alone, as she also had to downgrade to Seiun and Beacon. This is yet another example of how the equipment choice is not always about choosing the strongest equipment for all situations. Now we move on to the USS carriers. The first fleet that I tested was Yorktown 2, Enterprise, and Independence, and as mentioned previously, I swapped out Kazagumo for Baltimore. And yes, I did have New Jersey's cross-fleet buff. Although the fleet was successful in remaining concealed, and Yorktown and Enterprise did put up some decent numbers, the overall damage was not competitive at all with the previous comp, so I didn't bother finishing this set of tests. But don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean that Independence is bad against bosses. Keep in mind that her biggest strength in boss fights is her reload buff. In meta fights such as Helena Meta, she can give your other carriers an extra airstrike, which increase their total damage significantly. But the same cannot be done in Operation Siren boss fights due to the fights being 10 seconds longer, which is why there's such a big difference here, as the other carriers are still getting off the same number of airstrikes with or without her reload buff. Next, I tested the USS Duo with Implacable. This is where you get to see the head-to-head performance of the USS Duo against the IJN Duo. I opted to go with the SB-3C and double AP rocket planes on Yorktown in order to better sync with Implacable. Enterprise put up some impressive numbers, averaging at almost 500k, and Yorktown did more damage than Shinano. The USS carriers were also able to stay concealed for all 4 airstrikes, but Implacable was revealed on the last one. As you can see, their own damage is easily competitive with the IJN Duo, but the issue lies in the lack of damage buffs for the rest of the fleet. And you can see that despite using a Vanguard that doesn't deal a lot of damage, the total remaining HP is again not very competitive, especially when Enterprise got lower numbers of Lucky E's, so I didn't finish these tests either. In the last set, I tested the original combination of carriers that I used when Strength first came around. If you pay attention to the movement of the boss, you'll notice that it stops moving for all airstrikes if your airstrikes have a cooldown of around 21 seconds. On the equipment page of my carriers, the cooldowns are around 21.8 seconds, but I have 37 reload from my cats as well, so if you don't have as much reload from fleet tech and cats, you might want to use faster equipment to compensate. Compared to when strength first came out, and I think it was the hardest arbiter to one-shot, the addition of Sky Raider as well as some fleet tech has allowed this fleet to one-shot strength without the use of Helena or submarines. In 20 tests, the fleet was able to one-shot the boss 3 times, which the implacable setups were unable to. The average damage dealt by the fleets ended up being between the two implacable setups. The last couple of bad runs here dragged the average down by quite a bit, but it does come with the territory of relying on Lucky E. In terms of the solo performances of the ships, you can see that Enterprise did the most on average, making use of Shinano and Haku's debuffs, and Haku did about the same amount of damage, with or without Implacable. Shinano's damage did go down a bit as she is the most reliant on torpedo bombers of the three. Alright, so to wrap things up, the IJN Duo beats out the USS Duo thanks entirely to the debuffs they provide to the rest of their fleet. Implacable is very easy to use and very consistent as expected, but you should pay attention to the movement pattern of the enemy to see if you actually need a route for the enemy you're facing, because if you don't, then she is likely not the best option. It was nice to confirm that my theories were correct, and Shinano remains the best carrier in the game. And that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you guys found it informative and not too bland, and I'll see you in the next one.